Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I was thinking about it and I was thinking I never really had any direction, but thinking back, I wrote a lot. I think I was always writing. I always had notebooks full of stuff. Obviously, pre-internet, no blogs able to do. But I was always writing, and I think I must have wanted to be a writer, but I didn't. I suppose I didn't think that was a career. That was, and I was never encouraged. I was never encouraged to do anything, if I'm honest. I was quite clever, got good marks at school, and just sort of left to it. I wasn't anyone who needed any, or wasn't seen to be anyone who needed any particular guidance. And I just kind of aimlessly went along, not really any. And the only real time that I thought about it was when I was choosing what did I want to do at university. But again, looking at my son now who's at university and who has thank you. Sorry, he's just brought me a cup of tea, my son. Very clever boy, excellent with a kettle. He's got a path. He's got he knows what he wants to do. He's so focused. And my thoughts for university were, and my husband, when you talk to him as well, it was about leaving where we were. It was about getting out into the world. It wasn't necessarily about becoming something. And I remember careers. I went to the careers officer, and I did got put in a room with a computer and got, you go through all these questions, these multiple choice questions, and it comes up with air traffic control. And I was like, what? How was that? But I think, I was always writing that. I think the way that the outlet that I have for that now is my social media posts and my Instagram posts. I love writing on Instagram, and to an extent, the emails that I write for the business, although that's a bit more forced and I don't like that. But back when I was younger, I was always writing, and I think that must have been what I wanted. But I never grew up thinking I want to do this or I want to do that. So,
what did you end up studying then?
Archaeology.
Yeah,
and I loved it. And I always had an interest in history. Most of the stuff that I read will have some kind of historical bent to it. I love the books now that have come out that are women's perspective, to retelling the old classics, but from a woman's perspective. So I read a lot of that. But I never went into archaeology again. No career path. I've kind of blundered about it.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I've studied this. Now what do I do? Like become Indiana Jones or Lara Croft, or just join Time Team.
I had some amazing times. I was so lucky to work on, while I was at university, some of the sites that I worked on, incredibly rich sites, and best few years of my life. I worked up in Shetland, and
nice.
And you work with a team, and amazing places, amazing rich sites full of interest is a weak word, but I was incredibly lucky that was my experience of archaeology, because I have friends now who have their own archaeology company, and they basically spend their time watching diggers move earth around. Call it a watching brief, basically. When a land's being, if it's on sensitive ground and land's being developed, they're called in there just in case something's found. So it's not all Indiana Jones. Although, so my son is studying Arabic and Islamic studies at Exeter University, and he's just come back from a year in Jordan. That was his year away. So we got to go out to see him. We spent 2 weeks out there, and we got to go to Petra, which is that place where the Indiana Jones, is it
Yeah, in Last
Last
Crusade.
Crusade, and
Yeah.
oh my God, I had it on my screensaver once. I've had various different iconic sites on my screensavers, and that was one that I had on it. And it is, when you walk through that rock passageway, and then it opens out, and the treasury is just there in front of you. It's one of those, I suppose, bucket list things. And I don't think I ever really thought I'd ever go. And it was just amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, I went to Pompeii when I was a kid,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I'd have been about like 12 or something. But my dad was always like dragging us to Roman ruins and this, that, and the other. Like, and you'd see like a wall, like a bit of a
Yeah.
wall in some countryside. And then you go to Pompeii and there's like entire streets and
Yeah.
buildings and stuff. And it was like, oh, wow, like I can relate to this. They're like, I can imagine this place. Like, it was really like mind blowing, really sort of hit
Yes.
me as like, oh yeah, I can relate this to the films as well, and films of Rome and things
But
like that. So
I think you see these things on TV and you don't realize the scale. It's vast, and Petra it's a landscape. It's not just one monument, and it's so
yeah.
vast, and there's so many different periods there, and yeah, and that to be able to go to these places, I don't I never thought when I was younger, because I'm 50 now, and I'm from a little village in southwest Scotland, and I don't think my horizons were very. I don't know. I never felt, looking back on it, and I don't think anybody said. Nobody said to me you can't do anything, but nobody said to me you can do something. Does that make sense? So I just.
Yeah, there's kind of like
Oh,
no expectation of you,
yeah,
is
yeah,
there? There's kind of
yeah.
like, do whatever, we don't care.
Yeah. Don't get into trouble. Don't get
Yeah.
pregnant. That's fine.
Don't do these few things. They'll make us look bad. But otherwise, especially if you're making some money, all good.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I don't think there was any real expectation. I mean, I talk to my dad now, and he says, "Oh yeah, I always knew you'd have your own business." And I'm like, "But you never said that to me." Oh, I always knew you'd do well. Did you? Did you know that?
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 30, and to my guest, Joe Myers. This is another Squadcast interview recorded on the 25th of July, 2024. Hello, listener. Joe Myers is one half of the Swine that dines and co-owner of The Greedy Pig. This is the bio that Joe sent me. She states, in a nutshell, I'm a 50-year-old woman just going through the menopause, and this is kind of my issue, if you like. I want to talk about it so it becomes normalised for women coming after me. I'm a mother to a 20-year-old young man. I've been married to husband Stu for about 10 years, but been together since uni. We own and run a small restaurant. Have just done a successful crowdfunding campaign. I do yoga and knitting and sewing to control the rage. Love my job. Absolutely love it. But never ever thought this is what I would end up doing. Okay, let's do this. Episode 140 of Working Hours with Joe Myers. So let's jump into what you're doing now then. So what is it that you're doing now?
So, I, with my husband, own a very small restaurant. Started off as a sandwich shop, and yeah, we are just about to go into our second premises and be a little bit bigger, but with a bigger staff team, which is quite daunting. Yeah, so we started off. We took over a sandwich shop, and it was mainly So the two of us could be together, that we could work together, because he'd been a chef, I worked in care, and we never saw each other. And it was about being together. We had at that point, Connor was, oh, what is he now? He must have been, he was still at primary school, but he was young. We never really got time as a family, and this was about spending more time together. The way the childcare worked, because we weren't particularly well off, it was either he was either with us, or he was either with Stuart. Sorry, he was either with me or he was with Stuart, and so this was more of a being together as a family, because I found it quite. I'm quite social. I have to have somebody there to chat away to, and I was spending a lot of time. As much as I loved the time that I had with my son, I felt we just weren't together, and I was missing the grown up company, I think. So yeah, it was about us being together as a family, and so we took over the sandwich shop. Didn't have any great plans again. I think for the first time now that I'm 50, I'm planning things. And I've always been a little bit guilty of, whilst I think I'm probably the driving force in our family, there's never really a goal. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. So now we're planning, which is exciting, but everything is kind of not happened because we bought a sandwich shop. So there was obviously a definite that something was happening. We were doing something, but I don't know. We had vague ideas of where we wanted to take it, but yeah, nothing. This is the first time that I know, because I'm aware of retirement coming up, I know what I want to do with the business and where we want to take it and what the goals are. Whether we'll achieve them, and nothing is ever set in stone. I'm a great believer in you can change anything. Apart from having a kid, you can change anything. So we have plans, we have goals, because we're thinking, where do we want to be in 10 years' time? And it's not working as hard as we are now. That's the thing. We work really hard, and we need to be able to have the business. So not that we can walk away from it, or it's just basically step back, have a bit more time to ourselves. Go to Petra again, you know,
Yeah.
go places, do more travel, watching our son grow up. Go and visit him when he leaves home, that type of thing, because the business for the last 10 years has tied us. And I don't want to be, we don't want to be at mercy of the business. We want to be controlling it as much as you can control the business. And we want to be, in the driving seat rather than constantly reacting to it. It's not been a bad business. It's not, we've enjoyed our time, but now we're just thinking, and I don't know whether it's the pandemic and it resets and how you think about, yeah, it was a big reset moment for us, that when we stopped. We stopped for that first lockdown, and then we were thinking about coming back and what do we want to come back as. I suppose that was our first proper planning, and we just thought, can't go back to the way we were. Something has to change. We were working so hard before that. We The cost of living crisis and the last year has been really hard. So we still work hard, but I think we work a bit smarter as well. So, which has enabled us to get into the position we are to move. I can't even remember what your question was there. Tell me about your business. Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, what are you doing now? You're obviously planning then.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so there's some stuff like we chatted briefly before we started recording. So there's other stuff that I want to get into. My next question would normally be like, how did you get into it? We kind of covered some of that. I mean, I don't know if there's a particular. Is there any particular story of why you chose that particular venue, or I mean, it was just the right place going at the right time at the right
Oh,
price, or
it
the
it
opportunity
de-
came up, or
it definitely was not the right place. It was very much down to, this is the money we have.
right.
And it we bought a business, and at that point in Leeds there were very few independents, and all the big indie names that you know of now were within Leeds were not. They weren't there.
Mm.
They were very small, and it never occurred to us to start from scratch. Now, if we'd done it a year later and we'd seen all the other businesses starting up, we'd probably gone, hey, this money is better spent going into a blank unit, an empty shell, which is what we're about to do now. We're about to go into an empty shell and put our own identity on it. But I think maybe we weren't brave enough. We hadn't seen it happen anywhere else. Maybe we just didn't have the vision. We had the vision about what we wanted, but we didn't know how to get there. And yeah, so things, maybe if we'd left it a year, I think, and we'd seen how things were starting to evolve and how the smaller businesses were going into empty shells. And since then we've travelled around and gone to independents in different cities, and the creativeness that we went to a coffee shop in Berlin, and we were sat there. It was a coffee shop bakery in Berlin, and we're sat there and we're looking at their space, and they're like, your mind is blown at how creative people can be with spaces that if you just walked into them, the fact that people can see this, this bakery and this coffee shop, which just it was a wonderful place. It was everyone was happy, and the sun was out though, and it was relaxed, but it was in this, you'd have walked past it. You'd never have gone in there as the empty shell and gone, yes, this could be a bakery and coffee shop. And people can be so creative with spaces, and I hope that I'm going to be able to do that with our new space. I hope I've got loads of ideas about how I want it to be, or what we want to do with it. But maybe back then when we took over the sandwich shop as it was, we didn't have that vision, and maybe that's something that's developed in me over time. I couldn't. What we had was, we bought a sandwich shop and we saw a sandwich shop, and for the first couple of years, that's what it was, and all we saw was it can be a better sandwich shop. We never saw it as anything else. It was a sandwich shop, but we can make it a better sandwich shop. And then we started getting a bit, not dissatisfied, but just wanting to do more. And so over the years, it's evolved. And one thing that I think it is to our credit is that I'm never frightened of trying something else. In fact, if anything, I'm frightened of staying still. And I know that some people might look at what we've got and think, well, they've just been in the same premises. But the things that we have done in that premises, the journey that we've been on, the following that we've got, the people that have come through our doors, I'm really proud of that. And it maybe some people go, yeah, but they didn't grow. But I think we have, just not in physical size.
I want to do the questions in a bit of a different order. So I want to do the social media before we do the other questions. I think stuff will come out in COVID, but I think it'd be good to have the social media thing answers first to go into that. Because, well, for a start, I want to talk about the crowdfunder, and that gives a bit of a history of the place. I was familiar with, as I say, the Greedy Pig before I knew the sandwich shop. I passed it like a few times. I've been in there. I haven't been to the Swine that dines, but I was familiar with the brand. It's on North Street, so I'm on the bus regularly going past that sort of area. I mean, and that always seemed to have a sort of supper club vibe, like unique menus and sort of for a few diners.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was that the intention originally? Was that how it was conceived, or was it planned?
We'd done some outside catering. We were getting a bit of a following. We were putting some specials on, and it was evident that Stuart's been a chef. So when I met Stuart at uni, and he dropped out to do, basically just, it wasn't for him, and he started going to, he was working in bars, and they started sending him to Thomas Danby, as it was, to do catering. And then he got his first job at Leodis, which is now, I think, Brasserie Blanc, on Sovereign Street. That was where his first job was. And he'd been working in various different restaurants and everything. So he was a chef, and I worked in care. And then, so we'd been running the sandwich shop, and I think we just wanted to do more. And we'd done some outside catering. And then people started, you see on social media, Twitter just at the time, people were doing some supper clubs, and we thought, well, we can do that. But we never thought we could do it in the space that we were in, because it was a sandwich shop. So we did some pop-ups, and we did some really amazing pop-ups, and we had a lot of fun doing them. But it's a lot of work running the day business and then picking everything up and taking it somewhere else. And we did one for Compass Arts, I think. And it had been so stressful, just getting everything together, running the cafe, and then putting everything together for this big, long banqueting table. And we took everything down and we dropped it all off and basically just leaving it there. And we walked away. And as we're walking out, Stu said, "Oh, well, that was," and we'd had a disagreement about something before. And Stuart said, "Well, that was our that was our pre-event argument over and done with." And I thought about it and I thought, he's right. Every time we have an event, we have an argument beforehand because we're so stressed in the run up to it. And I thought, we can't keep doing that. And then the food scene before that in Leeds had been very, very formal, very event dining. People only went out for, and I think that's probably countrywide. Special events, birthdays, anniversaries, that's what people went out for. There wasn't a very casual dining scene. And then with the likes of Wunderboss, they arrived. I think they're 10 this week. Suddenly everything got a bit more casual, and the street food scene happened and everything. And people became a little bit more forgiving of their environment, I think. Before that,
it's like the hipsters arrived, didn't they? Like, because I basically, I was in London. I came back to Leeds in like 2015, and I'd visit Leeds sort of regularly in between to see family and so on. And I was living in like Tottenham, Dalston, Hackney, so I was around all of the hipster places and all of this kind of scene. And I'd come back, and as I arrived and like Belgrave's opening, and like you say, and Bunderbust, and it's like, it's like the hipsters have arrived, and like stuff. But I mean, as much as people insulted, but they're like, the bars got more interesting, the food
everything got more interesting. It was more vibrant. There was more influences coming on. I mean, it was just, it felt that stuff was happening. And it was quite exciting, and also I think we wanted to be part of it as well. We've kind of like pigeonholed it as that breakfast place up on North Street, and everyone had a fondness for us, but we wanted to be more. And we've been doing these pop-ups, and people were coming. People who came in for breakfast were coming to the pop-ups, and we could see that people were. The guy that works for us now, who's been with us 9 years, every time we did something somewhere, he was there. He said nothing to us. He's a very, very quiet man, but he was there at the front of the queue. We'd put a special on and he'd turn up, and it took me not a while to realise he was there, but he was with a very chatty man, who would come in. The chatty man, Andy, lovely guy, would only ever have the same thing. But I had great conversations with him, but only ever had the same sandwich, whereas his quiet mate, Paul, would have whatever was on special. And there's kind of that appetite for what we were doing. Every time we did something different, people would turn up to it. So we're like, okay, well, we're not too far off the mark, but we know that doing these pop-ups is quite stressful. We're obviously Stuart had recognised that we were having an argument before everyone, and that can't go on, can it? So we're like, well, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do in our own space. So we started doing some supper clubs, and from that we always had a theme, but that puts always having a theme, whilst it draws people in the door, to do a different menu every time you do something, that puts stress on Stuart as well. So we kind of went to like a small plate menu, which was, we started off once a month, then we went once a week, then we went 3 times a week, and then maybe about a year, 18 months before the pandemic, we made the change to full-on restaurant, no more cafe.
Yeah, that was a shock when I saw that.
Yes.
It's like, oh, it's fully changed.
Yeah. But it was the best thing that we did. And you get to the point where you think, I wasn't dreading the shutters going up in the morning. It wasn't but I definitely didn't have the love for it. Whereas I really looked forward to the start of service. You start getting this bit of a, even if you've only got a few customers coming in, but then you recognise some names coming in, and you've got a little bit of anticipation and you're looking forward to it, and then you open and then there's a buzz, and I love, for all that, we have, I think, comfortably 25 people in at night, and there's nothing like walking up the stairs from downstairs. You've been downstairs or something and you walk up and the sound of people laughing and eating, and that's why people do it. When you walk up and you hear that buzz and that energy, and that's why we do it. And I think why we're moving on now is not again because we've lost the love, but it just doesn't feel as good as it used to feel. And it's just, I think we're very much, we listen to how we feel about the place and about the business, and we knew about a year ago that it was time for a move. It was a little bit more of a slog to get to 5:30 when we opened. Once we were in it, loved it. But that journey was just a bit harder to get to 5:30. And I don't want, that's the time when you think, oh, if, that's the time to think you need to make a change. Maybe we should have thought about it before that, but things within our family situation didn't allow that. So,
do you know the El Barreto, the tapas bar at Gledhow Road?
I am aware of it. I have never been in. Yeah.
So it's a tiny place, but I think one of the things that's really winning about it is being a tiny place, of like, because they always seem busy and buzzy, don't they? And it you fill them up, and then it's like that demand's there. But as well, like you say, you have to be really on it to manage a space that's that full.
Yes.
And, work, and turn things around quickly so that you can have as many people in as you can. And, you get to a point where it's like, well, we're doing this, but it would be so much easier just to have more room to do it in.
Yeah. Somebody said to me a few years ago, and they now run a larger restaurant, but they'd gone from a smaller place, and they were like, oh, I really don't know how I'm going to be able to run this bigger place. And I said, but you run a small place that's rammed every Sunday, and you're turning people's, and you're slotting people in, and you're moving people around, and everybody still loves you. You're going to go into a bigger place with more breathing space. You're going to be able to orchestrate. You're going to be able to see where people can go and everything. If you can do it in a small place, and you can, the biggest thing is managing. You can see the speed at people are eating and everything, and you've got somebody else coming in. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. You have to turn tables over these days. The luxury of long, getting unless you're going to pay hundreds.
Yeah.
If you want a meal that's coming in at the price point we are, you have to accept that table will be used by more than one group. That table will have to be turned over. If you want the luxury of sitting there all night, you have to go to somewhere like Man Behind the Curtain or Home, or that's where you're paying hundreds. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. So my skill is getting to people still to walk out the door when I've got the table back from them with a smile on their face, and not feel that they've been pushed out, for them to leave going, oh, I had an excellent time, that was great, right, where are we off to now? That's my skill of my job, Otherwise, oh, we got chucked out, I wasn't ready to go, and then they never come back again.
Yeah, you feel hurried. Or the flip side of that, the worst side of that, is when, they can't get to you. They seat you, and you wait in, an hour, 45 minutes or whatever, and it's like, have they forgotten me here?
Fortunately, sorry, go on.
No, I want to go into the crowdfunder. So first, I've got a few questions about this. So how planned was it? Whose idea was it? Was it something that you guys just thought up, or did you reach out to social media manager? How did it kind of come about? Because it's really nicely thought out. And like, you kind of think, oh, a crowdfunder for a restaurant, hospitality industry or whatever, that's like, seems a bit strange, just make money or whatever. But you've sold like menu items and places, and like, I really like how you've tiered the structure and the story that you've told in the crowdfunder. So yeah, I just want you to talk about that for a bit, because not to spoil this story, but it was successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how did it come about? Did you think at all that it would be
So
successful?
when we moved from cafe to restaurant, the sandwich shop that we took over didn't have customer access to the toilet. You had to come in through the counter, round through the kitchen, and down the stairs. So we needed to knock a doorway in. And we did that one night. We made pies and we had a pie night. And we said, this pie night, the proceeds from this pie night are so that we can get customer access to the toilet. And we had queues around the block. So we're aware that if we do something, even now, years on, we do something, people show up for us, and we're eternally grateful for that. So we're kind of like, that was our first small attempt at crowdfunding. Then there's a guy called Gary Usher in Chester. And about the time that we did that for our toilet, he did his first crowdfunding campaign for his first restaurant, and I think he went for, and it's about 10 years ago. He went for £10,000 at that point, and I thought, what a cheek, what a nerve. But relatively new to the restaurant game. Oh, and the margins are so tight, and what banks are going to look at you now after? I mean, with yeah, banks are not going to look at you. They're just
Yeah.
not. I struggle to get an overdraft sometimes when I need something. You have to go through, and I'm like, oh, I only want, something for this oven, and I'm going, oh God. Anyway,
Yeah, you'll
so
get paid back for it, like.
I've been your customer for 12 years. I
Yes,
just won't
and we
get an
bailed you out a
overdraft.
few times. Do you not remember that? Come on, give us a break.
Yeah. So I'd watched what he'd done, and I've lost track of how many crowdfunders he's done. And he's basically, it's the model that he's built his businesses on. And he has a pub. I think he's just opening a bakery, and he did various. I think he's got 5 restaurants, and I mean, it's not the end to all your troubles. I mean, I really, what I like about him is not the crowdfunding that he's done, but he pushes his staff to the front, and he sort of like admits, I'm not the great chef, I'm this restaurateur, but here are my great front of house staff, here are my great chefs, and they've all gone on to do other things, and he's built a team. And that's what I really admire about him. But he came to my notice with the crowdfunding, as I think, there are people I know that are our customers who've donated to his crowdfunder. His restaurants are in Manchester and Leeds, but people, sorry, Manchester and Chester, and people in Leeds are buying vouchers for his crowdfunder. It shows you that it can be done. Now, he's a personality. you know, I couldn't have that voice on social media. He is a youngish man. He's not that young anymore, but he's a young man, very sweary, and I think there's a voice that he and some other men have, that on social media, that I, as an older woman, I couldn't act like that. I don't particularly find it offensive. I'm not bothered by it. I can be a bit sweary myself. I don't. But as a woman, an older woman as well, I
Looks
couldn't do
different.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I am always aware of it does cause me a little bit of anxiety how my voice will come over on social media. I can be a little bit opinionated on Twitter. Still call it Twitter. I can be a little bit opinionated. Stuart doesn't say things really on. He doesn't really say much on social media. It's to him, I think it is a tool for watching the cricket and finding out about other restaurants. He's not really, and it's not. He doesn't really engage that much. So
It's the way to do it, though, really, isn't it?
yeah, probably.
Like, just use it for what you want and block all the other horror out.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so long as you're not saying anything worse than the owners of these platforms, I think you're okay. That's my standard.
Yeah. So I'm aware that he obviously has this huge persona. Whether that's him or whether that's just a persona, I don't know. But he has this huge persona on social media, which has always driven his crowdfunding. I mean, he started off by his reviews on TripAdvisor, and that's how he got notoriety. I don't know if you'd call it that. That's how he came to my attention.
How he built his personal brand.
Yeah, yes. And I get it, so, and then he then retweet it on Twitter, and you get it. Your business is, regardless of what your business is, it's your baby. You put everything into it. You work so hard on it, and when somebody criticizes you from a place of not ignorance, I don't want to say
And
ignorance.
like, what have you done? Like,
Well,
yeah, what have you done? Have you done this? Have you done better than me?
yeah. We didn't wake up and just cook that meal. We've done this for years, And God, yes, some days you have off days. Some days you do. And I get it. You're spending your money and you've got a right to complain if you don't get what you spend, you've got, there are realistic expectations. When you hand over your money, you have a right to certain things when what you get back in return. And if you don't get that, you have a right to complain. But there are ways to do that. And some of the vitriol that you get from places like TripAdvisor, I have been called some awful things. I was called, what was the worst thing I called? It got taken down because I tweeted about it, and immediately people hit TripAdvisor with complaints, about it. I was called bovine with post-abortion blues. That wouldn't even go into my head. How does somebody even think that? And that to write that about, and do you know what it was? They were rude, and I said to them, "Please." That was it.
Usually the case, isn't it? Someone gets called out for their appalling behaviour, and then it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah, he'd had me running all over. The thing is, right, I can still picture him. My memory is it's dates, names, terrible. But I'll be talking to somebody and I can remember the last time that I spoke to them. I can see them. I can see what they were wearing. I can see where they sat, which is really great for my job. I can remember. Someone walks through the door and I can remember them. But if I see their name, not a clue. What was it? Crowdfunding. Yeah. So I'd seen Gary Usher on, through his TripAdvisor, his responses to TripAdvisor, and he stood up for his staff, which is great. The customer is always right. No, not if you're rude to my staff. No, you're not. So, and he stood up for his staff, and I really liked that. And he looks after his team, and I really, really respect that. I feel he can say it in a voice that I wouldn't get away with because of just who I am. And that's fine. I just have to find my own voice. And I am always anxious that how are people going to react to that voice? But so far, so good. And so I'd always been there on Twitter. We'd always had a presence on social media. But when we decided about the crowdfunder, and it was a definite decision, we'd thought about it over the years, but then we thought, no, I think we can do it now. I think we're in a position where it can be successful. Thought long and hard about the target, which was what would be a realistic target. And unfortunately, setting up a restaurant is expensive. And what is a realistic target is not necessarily what you're going to need to start up a restaurant. But we did have some savings, not a vast amount, but there are some there. And so we thought about the realistic target. I have somebody helping me with social media. I still control a lot of it. I still go in and do my own posts, but also I was suddenly going to have to be doing a lot of different things, and I needed somebody just to know that those regular ones are going off at the right time, because there's a lot to think about. But that's really hard, handing over your social media to somebody when it's been so personal to me. It's very much been my voice. and she's not me, so I can't expect her to have my voice. I think that would be unrealistic. But I think we've come to an understanding. I think I sometimes read it. I read it and go, oh, I'm not sure about that. And then I come back and I think, well, actually, what do people reading it think? And some people know it's not me, and some people don't care. It just gives the post gives them the, some people really
It
don't want
reminds
to
them,
read.
yeah.
Yeah, some people, that's all it's meant to do. It's just meant to
Yeah.
remind people and
Think about
inform
our
people.
brand.
Yeah, that's it. It isn't. It's not there for me to tell my life story on not on a business account. I have other accounts for that. So sometimes you have to sort of like check yourself and stop being so precious about it and see it for what it is. And and she understands our brand. And we released a post last night about an event. I'm already half booked, so it's working. So you don't have to sometimes not be too precious about it. And I think maybe I was. But having her there helped the build up for the launch of the crowdfunder. We picked what I thought was a realistic target. Yeah, and then we launched and picked the same sort of basically what I wanted people to think of it as not giving us money, but advance paying for a meal. That's what
Yeah,
it
I
was.
mean, I guess you ran the numbers on it as well of like, okay, so we want to reach this amount, so I want to sell this much. So how do I break that down? What are the realistic things? So I'm guessing you had like for each,
We
like you would do with the menu for like each item, we want to sell this many of these, this many of these, this many of
yeah.
these. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To an extent, we knew what, like for instance, Stuart's doing some master classes. We knew what our top number was for that, what would be manageable for him. We're doing some pies and some things to be delivered at home. So obviously there's a cut off for that, the whole logistics and how do we deliver stuff and how many can we make and without sending us mad. But also, you know, I hope there'll be some understanding that it isn't going to happen instantly. There will be, a time scale to this. So yeah, we knew what the cutoff point would be. We thought that most of it would come from those vouchers, those meal vouchers, and those meal vouchers are valid for 2 years. So yeah, and they don't start until it's 2 years from the day we go into the new place. So they're not for now. So and yeah, it there was actually some thought to it. Yeah. And it's the vast amount have been meals for two, lunches for two, dinners for two.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is
Which you
no
can see as
different.
well, because that's what you would get in the restaurant as well, largely,
Yeah,
isn't it? I guess, yeah. But I suppose you are also doing this. I mean, this is one of the good things. This is a fairly new idea for me. The kind of pre-sales element of social media, where you're kind of doing your active market research. So it's sort of you're gathering customers together and then going, what do you actually want? What would you like to have? What would you buy? What would be great? And you
yeah,
kind of you've developed. Obviously, the fundraisers, the things you've run before, have helped you to develop these items that you put onto the crowdfunder. But then, I suppose as that expands, that gives you other products.
yeah.
Essentially, you've got other product things that you can sell or bolt onto the menu or do later in the life of the restaurant.
The good thing is that over the years we've done various different things. The beef fat buns that we do were one of the things that got us through lockdown, and then we've got pies, the buns, desserts. These are all things that we didn't have a few years ago. So maybe if I'd thought about a crowdfunder a few years ago, I wouldn't have. After getting past oh yeah, we can sell vouchers for meals, then we'll go, right, but what else can we sell? And maybe I didn't have those before. And then, by doing different things as we've gone along. So when we were looking to get access to the toilet, we did the pies. And then we're actually catering 2 weddings this year, which are pies. So these things develop and they're sort of like spin off into separate brands. So when I was saying before about people may think we've lacked ambition and because we haven't grown and we haven't physically got more than one or two actual brick bricks and mortar places, but I have got 3 brands, 4 if you count the Old Greedy Pig, if we could do something with that, which, is always there in the back of my head thinking, could we bring that back as something? There's still a lot of love for it.
Yeah.
People still say about when they used to come in, and,
Yeah.
so I've got 4 brands. I don't think that lacks ambition.
And there's a distinct lack of proper greasy spoons in the city now. Like, you can buy breakfast and stuff, but like just a straightforward sarnie,
Straightforward
it's
shape,
harder
yeah.
to get than it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's partly that people place a value on it. They know it's something they know what they're going to spend on it. And we lost when we took over. This is the thing. If we'd been a year later and we'd started off from scratch, but we didn't, we bought an existing business, we lost all his customers within the first month because we went in with better ingredients, which obviously put up a price. What we didn't appreciate was that his customers weren't going to him for a bacon sandwich. They were going to him for a bacon sandwich at that price.
Yeah.
And then we came along, better bread, better meat, just everything was better. And his customers didn't care. Their priority was the price.
Yeah.
And we lost them all. And so that first few months before we started getting people clawing people back, we did a few deliveries, and we never saw those customers back again. And to be honest, that was probably for the best. And what we find is that there's things like a roast dinner, breakfast. These are things that in people's head they've assigned a price to what they are willing to pay. And unfortunately, with rents in the city centre, it's just not viable. I don't even know if it's that wanted anymore. I think people are very much more health conscious, and it's maybe, yes, they want it, but they don't want it as often. So I don't know whether the customer is there for it, to be honest, because we were seeing Fridays, obviously very busy day, but the weeks were trailing, the weekdays were trailing off. It was hard to get people in the door. There was
this
always
pre-COVID or?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's just people were asking for different options, and there's a limit when you're 2 or 3 people as to what your options can be. You can't do that much prep, and there was people at breakfast were wanting this huge variety of choice, and I don't know if I'd go back to that, to be honest. I think sometimes I think we were trying to work out what people were wanting anymore, and we were coming up a bit of a blank with the cafe. So yeah, but then again, one of the reasons when we came back, so prior to COVID, we did we were a small plate set menu, and I think we'd got into a habit of thinking, what do people want? We don't know what people want. And we're almost approaching it with a bit of a scattergun approach when it came to the menu. And then we came back and we had to think about what we wanted to do. And we came back with a more traditional format, starters, mains, desserts, and cooking what we enjoy eating. And I think that's the key to it. We love what we cook. And a few people, we lost people with that change as well, because every time you make a change, you lose people. That's just the way it is. You can't be for everybody, and that's fine. Getting your head around that, accepting that, is a bit of a challenge sometimes. You're like, why don't they want to come in anymore? It's because we're not providing what they wanted, and that is fine, because there are other people you can attract in. But I think if you produce whatever you're doing, if you like what you produce, you can't be the only person that likes it. But then you also have to recognise when you take a misstep as well and go, oh, do you know what, that wasn't quite right. You have to recognise when you have to always be critical of yourself. If you produce something, you think that's a banging plate of food, there's going to be someone who likes it, but you also have to go, that wasn't right as well. I need to change that and recognise that, and not be too precious about that, because you're not going to get everything right all the time.
Well, even if you've got, like, even if it's some physical performance that you've done a million times and you got the muscle memory for it. If you're overtired, something in your blood's off, whatever, you can miss your mark, or the wind's strong, something like that. It's like, even if you've done it a million times and it always goes that way, it doesn't mean it always will. Okay, mistakes can happen at any point, can't they? And you've got to go wrong to find out where you went wrong, to improve, to get better. So you have to be able to make the mistakes.
I will sometimes, because I'm completely self-taught when it comes to the desserts. I've never worked in a kitchen, and sometimes I can become so disheartened if I think of something and it doesn't work out. And Stuart is constantly saying to me, do you know, if it goes right every time, you never learn anything. Mm-hmm. You'd never learn from things always going right. You learn from it's a bit of a cliche, but you learn from your mistakes. But it's so true. And that's probably how I've developed as I have as I hesitate to say the word chef, but Stu tells me I'm a chef. Okay.
I mean, how do you see yourself? I guess you're both running the business, but how do you see yourself in the business? Is it just you both assigned? Did you naturally assign each other roles of how you were going to manage things, or was it just it fell into place? Or
Stu cooks and I do everything else. That's unfair. I'm very much the voice of the business, and he is very much he's still, and I think we both do, but he still loves food. He loves trying new things and going to new places. The biggest joy for us is going into a new restaurant and just loving the vibe and loving the food. We went to Berlin a few weeks ago, and Paul that works for us, I mentioned him before, he had seen this restaurant on Instagram, and he'd shown us it, and it was with a pork chop. There was a picture of a pork chop, and it had a red mojo on the base of the plate, and it just looked amazing. And he showed us it, and I was like, oh, that looks nice. And Stuart was like, oh, I wonder if they've got any tables. And Paul said, no, I have. I've looked. They've got a table. I was like, right, okay. So we booked, and we went, and it was just one of those nights. It was such a nice vibe, and the sun was out, and they had their doors open, and the staff were amazing, and you get a good rapport with the staff, and it was just lovely, and the whole thing about it. And it was one of those places that you think, how have they done this with this space? And they're obviously started off with very little, and they've just been creative. I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't get some kind of recognition. They're very early on in their journey, but just a really lovely restaurant. And but that's what we love to do. We love seeing how other people, and that's how it should be. You don't exist in a little bubble. You've got to see what other people are doing. And I think whilst we are still curious and excited about what other people are doing, then we will continue. But once you lose that and your world shrinks down into just your own restaurant and your own menu, and you don't see what's going on out there, then that's probably the time to hang it up. Hang up your apron. But at the moment, one of the biggest joys for us is seeing other places open and going and eating their food and creating other sort of relationships with other chefs and restaurants, and then going, we regularly go down to London and see new places down there and what's happening. That's but to go further afield as well and just see. But we're not into fine dining. I believe a restaurant experience is about the vibe. It's about
like interesting places and interesting items on the menu, not just about being as baroque as possible, and all the staff being either hyper snooty or hyper subservient. Like just friendly and amenable and interesting and atmospheric and something.
I believe that a restaurant it's about who you're with, and whether that's your partner or your family or your friends, or it's about spending time with them. And the food is almost not inconsequential, but it's the reason that you're there. But the reason you're there is to spend time with other people, and you can interact as much or as little with With staff, I prefer to interact quite a lot with the staff. I want to chat to them about the food or the place or the city that they're in. And I don't. I sometimes am baffled by. I get when people come in and they're there because to catch up with people, and that's their main priority. And we get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that, especially on Thursday night. Thursday night is catch up night. We get a lot of friends in after work. But I don't understand why you'd come into a restaurant that's owned by the chef and the partner is out front, why you would come into a place like that and not interact with the staff, why you would, because the whole point of our place is it's that feeling, that warmth that you should get, that you're welcomed in. I'm welcoming you in to our restaurant, and I want you to smile and to enjoy yourself, and I want to be part of that. And I don't understand sometimes when people come in and it's like you barely get eye contact with them. And I'm like, you probably should have gone to a more informal place because this is not for you. And sometimes people do leave and we know they've not had a great time, and it's because the food is not, it's not fine dining. We're not trying to break any boundaries. We're not trying to blow your mind. You shouldn't expect every plate of food to blow your mind. That's a lot of expectation to put on a plate of food, you know. I just want people to come in with an open mind and to be looking to enjoy themselves. And as soon as you come into a place and you think, I'm here to have a nice time, that's all you need to do. I'm just here to have a nice time. And then everything's going to go so smoothly. But if you come in and go, come on then, impress me, I've got no interest in that. So,
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
I'm about. I mean, Stu's food. Don't get me wrong. I carry Stu's plates of Stu's food out, and I'm going, oh, that looks great. Oh, I love that. It's rare that I don't carry some of his food out, going, that is a banging plate of food. And sometimes I'll go, no, you sure about that? Doesn't yeah. But I mean, I'm not sure that our food is photographable, Instagrammable. There's a lot of brown going on. It's really tasty. Presentation is not high up on our list, or it's not, never used to be, because we're not tweezered, we're not, like I say, high end fine dining. We're a hug. We're a big hug. That's what we are, and that's what I want to be. And I want people to walk out the door with a smile on their face, and they might not come back for a month, a year, but I want them to leave with a memory.
That's good. So first thing I'll say, have you listened to Simon Robertson's interview yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he's a food photographer. He was doing a project on chefs, shooting chefs. So
Yeah.
the other thing is, I haven't had any hospitality. I've had a brewery on, but yeah, I haven't had any food places on as yet. And that's one of the major businesses in Leeds, and a lot of people go
It
into
is.
that industry. I want to, we'll come back to other things, but I want to try and breeze through a few questions now. So I'm going to quick fire around these a little bit. So we've kind of, do you want to say anything on social media before we move on? Anything else that you want to add to it, or no?
Nope.
Okay.
I think I said a lot about social media. It does drive your business. I don't know how anybody ran a business without social media. Actually, you do. I was going to say, how did someone run a business without social media before social media? But my dad had his own business, and my sister and I used to walk the streets putting flyers through letterbox. That's what we did. Yeah.
Yep.
Won't go back to
Mail
that.
outs, mail drops,
Oh
leaflets,
God,
fly
yeah,
posting,
yeah.
word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yeah.
Local newspaper reviews. All of these things still work also, and they're kind of a bit more desperate for people to use them these days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's do... I'm going to put COVID at the end because I think there'll be more of a story to that. So what I'm going to do... I'll do Brexit first, then I'll do climate change, then we'll do COVID.
Yeah.
Then I'll go into the sort of change questions if we get time. So, yeah, let's do Brexit first.
Okay.
Has it changed your business at all? Is it something that you've noticed? I mean, I have no idea in the sector if it's had any effect.
I think it's huge.
Right.
It obviously staffing. so difficult to get staff. So yeah, that was the major the major effect. I personally found it very upsetting. I yeah, I think it restricted having a young son. I think it so restricted his opportunities. I had a lot of customers who were European. Spanish guy lived upstairs, used to come down a lot. Yeah, yeah, I found it really upsetting. You come to terms with it, I suppose. I just, but obviously there's a cost implication when you're using products from Europe. There's a cost implication there. Not so much. We haven't noticed that as much because we, use a lot of Yorkshire produce, but there are going to be some implications there. But I would say for our industry, the main one would have been a staffing issue. I think sometimes in this country we see we're not particularly respectful of hospitality staff. We don't see people in hospitality as having particular, unless you're a chef. Chefs are held in high regard, but everyone around chefs, you're seen sometimes by some, not everybody, not at all. And I say, sometimes, despite being a business owner of 12 years, I'm still viewed as someone by some who just carries plates, which is a little upsetting. And some people don't talk particularly respectful to staff. And why then, if that's how you're treated, would you want to go into that industry? But so we don't see it as it's a bars and restaurants are seen as a stopgap, and we don't view it as a career unless you're a chef. I think sometimes in some restaurants that's changing now, but I think that people from Europe have a different view of working in restaurants, and I'm not ashamed to say I'm front of house staff. I am a sommelier. I am, maitre d'. It's there's pride in it, and I don't think that we can. To us, sometimes it's very much a stopgap. It's something you did whilst you were at uni, or it's something that you did as a second job because you needed extra income, and it's not thought of as a career. And I think that I've come across people. There's an amazing woman works in a restaurant in Leeds, and she's front of house, and she's Italian, and you can tell she loves her job and she's so proud of what she's doing. And I just look at her and I think, oh God, I wish everyone was like you. And just, I love it though. I see it as, but then I own the business. So, you know, but I wish we could see it more. And I do think it's changing, but I wish we could see it more as a viable career. But then that's down to businesses to change that and to give people, to show them, to provide more for them, to give them to help them discover a sense of satisfaction within the role that they take up, and to have some progression there as well. That was about Brexit, wasn't it?
Yes. Before we move off this, I'm going to say just like prices of, I mean, you sourcing locally and so on, but even still, I mean, with prices basically doubling since COVID.
Yes.
I mean, that must have affected things as well to a degree.
The major thing, fortunately, didn't affect us as much was the energy increases. And I think there was a point before Christmas where it felt like every day you heard of a business going under. Every day there was a new one. And it was really tough. And we knew that our lease was coming up for renewal, and we thought, do we walk away? Do we just not re-sign? And you kind of, it was really tough. But the problem with us was every time we thought about what do we then do, we end up thinking we're doing the same thing but working for somebody else, so we might as well carry on. But we were very, very lucky in that we signed just before the war in Ukraine. We re-signed our energy contract, so everything was quite low. So when all the prices skyrocketed, we were already locked into a quite a lengthy contract, and that saved us. There's no way that we could have suffered the increases that everybody else did. We were so lucky. And to be honest, the broker had phoned me and said, you need to resign. And I was like, I've got months and months. I don't need to do this. And he's like, no, you do, you do. And I thought he was pulling a fast one. Like, what? But I was so lucky. Food costs are, yes, have an effect. We've always been just the nature of running a food business is you always have to be really tight on your margins anyway. You have to be very control.
Because your prices, your stock price is always going to fluctuate, isn't it? But your
Yeah.
sale price has to stay as long as it can at a particular price for your customers so
Yeah,
they know what they're getting, what
if
they're
you're
buying, and so.
back to what I was saying about the bacon sandwich, people put a price on what they know what they want
Yeah.
to spend,
Yeah.
and they'll put a price on it, and they will decide whether they'll look at a plate of food and they will judge whether that is expensive or cheap, or they'll judge where it is. Of course, I'm not going to bang on about hidden costs and everything. There's no point to that. Everybody knows there are costs involved in running a business. But the food costs are not. The food costs in our business anyway are not the major cost. Staffing and, like I say, the electricity.
Space, yeah, your
Yeah,
overheads.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, rents are ridiculous in Leeds. They're stupid. They really are. And you can't get a landlord to look at you. If you're a small business, even if you've got a track record. So yeah, the food costs, to be fair, the food costs are something that you can control, though. You can, you know, hunt about for, God, olive oil is ridiculous at the moment.
Yeah.
So you can maybe switch to Yorkshire rapeseed. You don't have to be using olive oil all the time, or, you can make alterations to your dishes, and you can source different ingredients from different places, and you can make choices about that. You can't necessarily choose a new landlord.
Yeah.
So at least with food costs, although they have skyrocketed, at least you can have some control over your menu, and you can say, I can't use that ingredient. I'm going to try and find something alternative. And you just have to be more creative, but you feel possibly that maybe you have more control. There is something that you can try and work on. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work. And yesterday we heard of Home, fine dining restaurant in Leeds, closing their doors, and that's just it's another loss. It's not
Unless
the
they
same.
get rescued, because we've had a couple recently of they've basically announced they were closing and have been rescued, but
Yeah,
we can't rely on that all the time. But I mean, it could happen. Fingers crossed for them.
yeah. I hope. Well, it just depletes they say nobody comes to Leeds for, well, maybe they do, but one restaurant or one bar. They come for a seat. I've always believed that. And they might not walk in through our door, but they'll go through somebody else's door, and it just creates a more vibrant scene, a nicer place to be. So yeah, so no,
Yeah.
and also people also they might come to Leeds for one restaurant, but they might not just come for one day. So, we used to get people coming to Man Behind the Curtain, and they come to us one night because we're very close. They come to us one night and then go to the Man Behind the Curtain the next night. And I think to believe that there is an element of competition, there's no getting away from that. Of course there is, but you can't get hung up on that. I can't feed everybody in the city. I've got 25 seats. So, you just have to view it as, oh, and I also, there's a restaurant opened a few months ago, and they've got loads of attention. They're great. We love them. And we went in there a couple of Sundays, and I knew half the people in there because they're our customers as well. People don't go to just one restaurant. They go to them all. So you've
Nor would
got to
you
get
want to,
over
though,
that.
either, would you? I mean,
Oh,
like you saying going to Berlin, it's like, if it was all just about your restaurant, it'd be like, no, this is the only restaurant, this one, and it's the best. I
that is
don't want to
that is
hear
the
about
way
other
to,
ones.
yeah, that is, but people do. They want you to, what's your top favorite restaurant? I've got loads. I don't have one restaurant. I have,
Could you even pick a best meal ever? Like, could you highlight one sort of like meal of like, that was the pinnacle of my dining experience? I mean, you could probably think of examples, but really, when you break it
no,
down and you say, well, of all the things I've eaten, is that really? Or was it just that pie I had one time when I was starving and at a bus stop?
oh, well, that's always a good one. I know the best mouthful of food that I had. We were in Naples, and it was so hot. We went to Naples in August. Don't do that. That's not the
Just don't
time
go
to
to
go.
Naples.
God, it was so hot.
Don't.
Oh, and then it was the first gelato I had in Naples, and it was a coconut gelato. And we'd walked around, and I can't remember if we'd already eaten our meal, but I know I was so hot. And I'm Scottish. I'm not used to heat. And we had got the tub, and I sat, and it was on a concrete bench, and it was dark, and the traffic was mad, and we'd it felt like we'd walked for ages. And then I got this coconut gelato, and it was the best thing I have ever tasted, ever. And that's but that I can, again, it's in my memories pictured. I can almost feel it. I'm thinking of it now, and I can feel how it the coolness of me putting it in my mouth, and the taste, and I can feel I'm there again. But that's what food does. That's what food does. I don't know if I've got a favorite. I can tell you the most technically perfect meal that I've had, but I don't have those memories about it. Um, but then again, that's me. I don't know. There's people who will, you know, Michelin star chasers. They go around the world eating at Michelin stars, and they'll probably be able to tell you stuff like that. But I don't. It's not how I think of things. I think of how did it feel when I was sat there? How did it feel when I left? And maybe the best restaurant that I've been in, I don't remember the dishes. I just remember the feeling. We had the restaurant in London that we have a fondness for is Morrow, and it was one of the first cookbooks that Stu ever got and cooked for me from, and it was one of the first restaurants that we went to together, and I love that. But that's a personal memory. It's not necessarily about the
Yeah.
prowess of the restaurant, which was a great restaurant, is a great restaurant. I don't think we'll go back tomorrow, to be honest. I think we've done it. I think we've got the memories, and there's so many other restaurants out there, and I'm not sure. And maybe that's some people sometimes feel about us. We were their customer, and now we've moved on. But that is the nature of having restaurants. You know, some people will stay with you through thick and thin. They will always be there. But people, you're a point in as a restaurant, you're a point in their life. And that's great. That's just what it is.
Well, we could go with. I mean, because of this area, I mean, there's such richness in it, but there's a whole thing in there about feeding someone. Like, we've been talking about eating and communal eating, but feeding someone, that's a big, important thing. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we eat every day. And, like, people feed us all the time, and we go into restaurants and stuff. And it's like, it's because we're so busy doing God knows what, we don't really think about the important stuff, like eating, and like, we should be enjoying our food. Like, I was very much a non-foodie person. I was always a fussy eater. I was very much like just meat and potatoes. And I'm like, and I lived in Amsterdam for a couple of years, and you'd have all these like, various people from various different countries in the place that I worked at, and French and Italians, and they're talking about food and how much they love food and life and sex and food and life, and I'm like, I'm from this rainy island, it's all miserable. I just eat potatoes and starch, and I don't like it. I don't get what you're on about. Why are you all excited about this when there's beer? But it's massively important, and we all have these weird, like, I think everyone's got an eating disorder now because we've got these weird relationships with food. But what it should really be is that, it's the sharing, it's a communal experience, it's a necessary experience. And yeah, it's important, and it's important how it's done and what you're eating and why you're eating it and when you eat it and where it's come from.
Yeah, yeah. God, that's a lot for a restaurant to deal with.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm just making sandwiches. And the customer's like, £4 for a bacon sandwich. You're like, this is about the whole meaning of life and human experience. And so, I just want to go to work and have something in my stomach. It's a huge area, isn't it? But that's an important thing. I mean, like, if you think of the amount of people that you've fed,
yeah,
like, that's a crazy thing to think about. Like,
I know there's a family that I can still remember the day that they came to us. I was outside. It was really quiet, and I was outside washing the woodwork around the window. I had soapy water everywhere, and I can see them coming towards me. And the first child was in the pushchair, and this is again my memory. I'm picturing them walking towards me. So that was very early days. We're starting to get a bit of a reputation. So it must have been about 11, 12 years ago. She then had a blog at that time. She wrote about us, and that's why I then got a connection with them and started talking to them. And they contributed to a crowdfunder. Their two girls now are growing up, and I chat to them. I wouldn't go as far as to say maybe I would say they're friends. I don't know. There's still with some people, there's still a boundary there, because obviously they are still buying something from you, and they still have to be able to say this wasn't right. That's fine. Some people they're my friends, they're part of my life. And I met them through having the pig and then the swine, everything. But I feel that there's been little parts of, we've been part of their life, and I've seen their girls grow up, and I've seen them come in individually with the girls or with one of them, and you see how they interact differently when they're all together or when they're one on one, and you're a little part of that sometimes, and it's just I can't, when somebody says, we've not grown as some of the big businesses, there's people who started off at the same size as us and now have 3-4 massive empire or whatever, or they've I so what? I've been part of people's lives, and I've loved it. I've loved it all. And yeah, I don't have this massive empire. But I'm
but it's not
incredibly
what you
proud
want
of.
either. It's not what
No,
you want either,
I've
is it?
never
Otherwise,
wanted.
you would have pursued that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah,
well, it's fine to, to get to a size, stick at it, get really good at it, build something, have a business that has a lifespan and close it. It doesn't have to live forever and conquer the
yeah.
world.
No, no, no. I've never wanted to conquer the world. I've got, I have, oh God, to say this, I've got, I think I've got a strong marriage. I think where we could have, the stresses that we've gone through in the last few years. We've both lost a parent. It's been quite stressful. It's been hard. There's been financial worries, but I think we've come through it stronger. I'm incredibly proud of my son. He's he's a clever boy. He's clever. I didn't do anything about that, but he's sensitive and he's emotionally intelligent, and I think being able to spend time with him, which was what the goal was. The goal was to spend more time as a family, and so yeah, I'm really proud of where we are in life. We might not have this huge business empire, but and the people that work for me are happy, and I hope I can continue that as we take on more people. I care about the people that work for us. I care about the people that come through our doors, and my goal has never been to have this huge business empire. I find it a little daunting that I'm now going to have a couple of different brands going, and do some. Our plan is do more outside catering. The plan is to have the buns in one place and to have that as a thing that can go outside. But what we're doing here is we're retirement planning. That's what we're doing, so that I can step back. But it was never to conquer the world. Never was. It was to be happy.
No, I know, but the fact that you're sustainable, I mean, like, if a business keeps going, it's because it's growing on some level, there is, like, even just sustaining at a size, there's a, okay, it's not growth, it's reproduction, but it's there, it's not declining, it's not shrinking, and that, you could essentially sell out at a later point, if we're going to retire, so we're selling up, you could sell that brand, but you'd be selling something much better than what you bought. You bought a particular brand that went a particular way that you rebuilt and made into something else.
Yeah.
And then that could be sold on, that could become, the global dominating entity. But
we've never stayed still. You can't stay still because
you're dead in the water.
The customers that stay with you regardless through thick and that one regular that's in there every Friday night. You can't exist on that.
Yeah.
No. You've got to be constantly trying to attract new customers. So to say that you haven't grown maybe is a little it's maybe not accurate, because you do always have to keep attracting customers, because there will always be the ones that fall by the wayside, and people's circumstances change. I did have a message from someone who used to come to us. She worked at the building college and she came in a couple of times a week, and she messaged me and she said, I really want to donate, but is there an option to just give a few pounds? And I said, I don't want you to donate. Don't do that, because I know you're it's just enough. I said, retweet.
You're a customer, yeah, you're in. Yeah.
Just retweet. It's fine. I said, come and see me when we're set up. I'll give you a tour around the new place and just, give you a hug. And she's had a tough time, she's, and I wouldn't ever want anybody who can't afford it to donate. I just come and see me when we're in. I'll give you a hug.
I would want people who can't afford it to donate, but I would appreciate them more.
Well,
I would appreciate them more than the people who can just throw cash at me of like, there you go.
Maybe if it hadn't been successful, maybe I would think like that. But I have the luxury of being able to go, no, it's fine.
Let's do climate change. I only want to spend like 5 or 10 minutes on this.
Yeah.
I ask it because Leeds has declared a climate emergency because it's done nothing but bloody rain this year. Yeah. It's really grim at the moment, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
Can I see some blue sky at some point, please?
I
think my eyes are healing up. It's grim. And then it's been really muggy and sweaty. But yeah, so on the climate front, we mentioned the olive oil price.
Yeah.
Does it affect your business at all? I mean, I would imagine it's kind of on your agenda because you try and be locally sourced, and you seem very thoughtful about the food that's being produced and the menu and how you want to present it. So, yeah, does it affect the business, or is it, something that, is it additional, or is it something that you consider within the business? I suppose I'm asking.
We are, our food would be traditionally British. We're careful from where we source our meat from. Yeah, we think about what we're getting. We're not buying exotic ingredients. Those exotic ingredients don't belong on our menu. So straight away, I remember somebody who was who'd been to, and he'd said to them, if I need to fly a strawberry around the world, I will do. And I was shocked. If a
That's
strawberry's not,
disgusting, isn't it?
yeah, pretty much.
It's a
So I'd rather
strawberry.
it's a strawberry.
The kind of egomaniac nonsense that is.
Yeah. And I was
Yes, I'm willing to burn all of this carbon for a strawberry.
We like, for
Destroy
instance,
10 rainforests for this fig leaf.
yeah, just don't. There's no need.
Yeah.
There's just.
I mean, I know it's for the clicks, but even still.
Yeah. Yeah. Just things like, we only ever have asparagus on the menu when it's in season, and it's Yorkshire asparagus, and it just does. It's, I mean, partly, yeah, it's marketing, yeah, but that's what restaurants.
But it's
do.
also a better way to eat.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So, and it doesn't financially, it doesn't make sense to be importing stuff from around the world. When it's grown on your doorstep, just that. So that affects us. I'd like to do. I've just had yesterday been contacted by a company for taking food waste away for composting. So
Is it plate to plate?
no, I'm aware of them.
Yeah.
But there's another. I think they're called
there's another one.
But plate
Yeah.
to plate. I've been told about them by Slow Rise Bagels. They use it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to do that. The problem has been space to do stuff, but I think that's going to be a big focus on what we do when we move. We're putting a lot more thought into that. We've not been as thoughtful when it comes to waste as we should have done, but you're going to be forced to do that in the next year or so. So that's going to be a big focus for us. We've always tried to keep waste. Just, it doesn't make sense to have waste as a restaurant. It's one of the things. So I'm not big on places that call themselves zero waste for the sake of using every stem and thing, and trying to use your coffee grounds for something that doesn't taste great. What?
Just create some awful. Yeah. Here's some slop that we've made sound good and charged you for.
Yeah. I'm not.
You can feel ethically good about this horrible thing that you bought.
Yeah. Yeah. Spent coffee is called spent coffee for a reason. You can't use it again. Stop trying. So, I think you just need to be thoughtful in what you're buying in. Try and use it in a responsible way. Don't waste stuff, but you're gonna have some waste, and if it's I wish we could do. No, I want to do more. My aim in the new place is to do more. I don't think we've done as much as we can. I will kind of cop out a bit and say it's because we've been so small. We do a lot of work and we've been tired. But that's a rubbish answer. But my aim with more staff is to think more about this, be more responsible. I don't think we've been bad. We certainly, we don't waste stuff. We don't import stuff from around the world. And we do use stuff locally, but I don't think we're as good as we can be. And that's now going to be a focus.
Source ideas from the staff.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. Because it's like, because we've got these scorecards, haven't we? Like, essentially, we're given sort of, sustainable development goals or whatever. They've got a list of like, do this, try these things. But it's like, crowdsource the ideas, because people have got some amazing ideas on this.
Yeah.
And like, easy wins and like, I think, and plus it gives them some sense of like contribution as well. And I think that's one of the other things that's difficult. It's like, I don't want to go into a whole staffing sort of thing. I want to speak to another person in recruitment and really get into that. But yeah, I think one of the things with jobs and the issues with jobs and all of this like productivity and stuff is like having control within the job, and there's this breakdown of trust, not in every place, but in a lot of places. It's like people don't trust the staff that they're hiring anymore, and
No, no.
staff don't trust the companies that are hiring them, and they've like neither of them have got any intention of being around each other for very long, and it's kind of like that needs fixing.
Yeah,
Like,
very much so. I think it's I think it's possibly the thing that we will find most challenging, having been such a small operation for so long, to suddenly take on staff and relinquish things. Like I said, with the social media, to hand that over to somebody else, that was a big deal for me to let go of something. But I think Stuart, sometimes I'll look at him, I'm going, why are you doing that job? Why have you not given that job to somebody else?
delegated.
Yeah, yeah, and there has to be an element of trust, and you have to do that. And I think that will be, personally, Stuart and I, that will be our challenge, to step back and go, that's fine. We employed these people for a reason. Now we have to let them. I did work for a company that that had employed me and my colleagues because of certain qualifications that we had, because of certain experiences that we had, and then refused to hand the jobs over to us. And it was incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
And remember, we're sat there, and it was yeah, one of my colleagues had she didn't teach, but she had her PGC SE. Is that how you say it? Is that the teaching qualification?
PGCE, yeah.
Oh,
I think it's
see, yeah.
changed now. I think it's something else. But
So she
yeah,
had
I
she had
remember that one.
that, and she'd been taken on because that was of that qualification. And then when it came down to trying to do something with it and to run some classes, she was told, no, no, you can't do that. That's not your job. And she's like, but you took me on because of that qualification. Why can't I do that? And it was just nuts. And some of the things that I'd done with people in my previous employment, that's why they'd say, you'll be great for this role because you've done that, so you can bring this. And then you're like, no, you're tying my hands, you won't let me do it, and this is why I'm here. And it just bred this discontent. And then when CQC, the Care Commission, came in, and they asked us, and I think we all said the same thing. We were like, what do you find, most they were just asking us about how we felt about our role. And I think all of us just exploded with this frustration because of things that we wanted to do and to make positive impact on people's lives, and they were just stopping us from doing it because it wasn't ticking certain boxes. So
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like, I've been in jobs where I feel like I am literally just in this job, so I'm not in the street causing trouble. Like, because I'm not really doing anything here. They just want me
yeah,
to fill a chair to get me, off the couch. It's like, I could be doing something. Like, there are things that I can do. I'm not completely
yeah.
useless.
But
Like, it
it
would be
goes,
nicer if I was engaged in actually doing something
yeah.
rather than just being
But
paid to do nothing.
it goes back to what I was saying about our industry not being viewed as a viable career.
Proper
And
jobs. I mean, that idea
yeah,
of a proper job. It's like, are you getting paid for it? Do you have to get up? Do you have to do work? Do you get paid for it? Okay, that's a proper job.
yeah, yeah. But it is, seen as a stopgap or something for extra money.
Yeah.
And I think people don't expect to have a sense of fulfillment from a job in hospitality.
Or
But why,
pride or
why
competency
yeah,
or.
why shouldn't
But
they?
there are brilliant people in that. Like,
Yep.
there was a guy. Anyone who goes in Alicats down Harrogate
Yeah.
Road will know who I'm talking about. But there was a bar person in there who was amazing. Like, it was like one of those competency porn kind of short, social media posts that you see. It was just like he would remember everyone's name, where they were sat, what they were drinking, what was going on, what the bill was. Like, effortless as well with it. Just sort of, oh, there. So, and made it look so easy. And it was one of those, like, it puts everybody else to shame. You are making us all look bad, but also, damn, you're looking good doing it. So
But yeah, no, you need I have a lady who works for us now, and I don't necessarily think she needs to come and work for us anymore. She certainly did a few years ago, but I think she enjoys coming, and I can see the difference in her. And people tell me how wonderful she is when she's serving them, and and I've seen her. She barely spoke to people when she first started working for me, and now she's chatting away to people. She's a different person, and I just think that's just really lovely to see. That's really, oh, that sounds a bit trite, but I've seen her grow. I've seen her grow and become more confident, and that's gone forward into, actually, she has a part-time role with us, but she has a full-time role, and she's become more confident in her full-time role. And I've seen her go into another position and go, do you know what? I'm not getting everything I should do from this position. And I should be asking for more. I should be valued more. And I feel that that's partly because she spent time working with us, and she's become more confident with us, and it's gone into other parts of our life. So yeah, and I think not everybody wants a huge career. Some people do just want to go into work, do the job, get paid, and go home. And because the job is for the rest of their life, the job allows them to do other things in their life. That's great, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy being there while you are. You don't.
It's supposed to allow you to have a life, not be your life.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be 40 hours of hell just so that you
Yeah,
can do
yeah,
something
yeah.
else outside it.
And if you are going to do that, make sure you put a time limit on it, because
Yeah.
if you are doing that every day, and especially if you don't have to, the results are not going to be good for you.
I think one of the problems with working front of house is that you have to be a certain type of person. You have to look at people and almost anticipate what it is they need.
But I think
That
if you're in the market, if you're working, you have to do that. Like even the dusty old academics who used to hide behind all their books in the back of a library, even they have to be out in public now and speak to people and so on. Like you cannot hide from the world in work anymore.
no,
And that's why, like, everyone should do a tour in customer service, because it's like, yeah, it can be really hard and difficult, and dealing with people can be awful and complex, but you're going to learn so much from it. Also, most people are nice and are straightforward.
they are.
Like,
They
oh,
are.
okay,
99.
maybe not most people. Most people are kind of like mid. But, there are a lot of nice people who will come along who are like nice, and you remember them. And that they will happen more than the bad ones. They will happen more than the
Oh
bad ones. You
yeah.
will see more of them.
I think that most people are nice. I just don't know if everybody knows how to express it. Yeah, most people who come in through our door, I think maybe because they're coming for a good time. Maybe that helps. I think most people are just bound up in their own life, aren't they? And they're not aware sometimes of what's going on around them, and so they don't have. You don't. You just get little snapshots of people, don't you? So you don't. But I think most people are. I think most people are good. Maybe nice is my perception, not theirs.
Yeah, well, then we get into all sorts of complicated semantics about this, that, and the other, and who's doing what. But we all get the general gist there of what we're saying. So I'm gonna do quick fire on these other questions. So I'm gonna do UBI first. So universal basic income.
Mm.
If it exists, so I want you to think about it in two ways. First of all, if they brought it in now, would it make any difference to you? I'm assuming the answer is no.
No.
And then retroactively, if there was a UBI, do you think that would have affected anything in terms of the work, like where you've ended up? So I'll put those two questions to you.
I think it would have done when I worked in care. Um,
Do you think you'd have
that
left earlier, maybe, or?
I left because of the responsibilities that were being put on us for less money, and that I felt because of lack of people in the industry, because of lack of places were running on agency staff, and I thought an accident was going to happen, and it's going to be my neck. I felt the place. I felt everything was unsafe. It was running on agency staff that didn't have, the
Assurance, experience, the knowledge of the place, training.
yeah.
Yeah.
I left two places very much for the same reason, that when you're employed on minimum wage and expected to do an awful lot, you've got a lot of responsibility. You're dealing with people with
People's
behaviour.
lives.
Yeah, and you're recruiting on minimum wage, and I loved it. I mean, I remember my first shift, loved it. Thought this is what I'm meant to do, meant to be here, and the money was shit, and I was expected to do sleepovers, and I'm spending time away from my son. And, people don't get that. Minimum wage, and I've got to spend 2 nights a week out of my own home. So if there was maybe a basic income that meant, I don't, yeah, that would have been very welcome back then, because maybe I would have had a little, but I didn't leave it because of the money. I left it because of the
But it would have given
conditions.
you a bit more freedom, a bit more flexibility, because you don't have that, do you? Because
Yeah,
you work in those long hours, you're tired, you got no time to do the things that you want to do,
yeah.
and then you have to go back and do that again, and you're kind of like, why am I doing
I,
this?
I, the thing is that what the main motivation for me leaving is that I was going home and just going, and this happened and that happened and everything. And
Yeah,
Stuart's like, why are you bringing this into our
yeah,
house?
yeah,
And I was turning into a horrible person. I didn't like who I was, you know. Um, and then you go, and I'm doing it for this money.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Yeah. So I think back then it would have definitely had a bit of an issue, because, but I think that money isn't always the when you don't have money, money's a massive issue. But once you start to get a bit of money, it isn't always the issue. It's conditions and how you're treated.
And
So I think, yeah,
time as
time.
well, the time
Yeah,
that you've got
yeah,
available.
yeah. So, but yeah, it would have helped massively back then, but not now. No, but back then, yeah. And I can see some people that I know that I think that would help you. I think, as on the industry, it might have a bit of an impact, because maybe the people who work the part-time jobs for extra money wouldn't have to do it. So we would have to think as an industry, oh, we've suddenly lost a lot of part-time staff. We need to make ourselves more attractive. And again, back to, we've got to, what can we do to get people to come into the industry and stay in the industry? How can we retain them? How can we make this a place they want to be?
But the thing is, it's like, and I think we've lost this, is that the market needs to realize it's not just about creating jobs, it's about creating careers. It's about
Yeah.
creating, like, a job isn't, like, a job is, 2 days, 6 months, 3 years. Like, a job is nothing. A work, like, a career, a vocation, that's years, that's decades, that's meaningful, that's a life. A
Yeah.
job is not a life. Job is something, it's a project. Work is life. It's building something, through a long period, through a life, I think. And that's
Yeah.
a realization that I've come to after 125 episodes and however many interviews. So, final question for you, and then we'll do a wrap up. There's loads of stuff that I want to ask you, and loads of other stuff that we could have covered, but I'm not going to make you sit here all day. So, but I will say to other podcasts, if any other podcasters are listening, to get you on, because but yeah, so the other questions, the change question. So if you could change any three things, so bearing in mind you're already changing a lot of the things that you can, so you can reframe this a little if you want, of like change it around a bit how you want to answer. But the question is, what three things would you change about your work if you could? You can be realistic or you can be fantastical. So however you want to answer that.
Three things. I'm nervous about, I've worked very closely with Stuart now for 12 years, and I know that there's going to be physical split in that he'll be upstairs and I'll be downstairs. That's a big thing. I'm nervous about that, and it is odd in that we work together and live together, and we are. It's like I haven't seen him for 3 hours. I'm fine. But I'm nervous about that. So I think what we have to do is we have to have points. I have to structure things more. So I think that's a change I need to make. I think there needs to be more structure. What do I want to change? I'm happy. I'm quite stressed at times. I wish I could handle stress better. But I do things to handle the stress. I go to yoga now. I love yoga. I never saw that happening. I love yoga. I sew and I knit. I started knitting in the pandemic to try and it just allows me to focus. It channels my mind onto one thing and it stops the noise from. And I know it's a bit, oh God, I've turned into the old Scottish granny with her
Oh God,
knitting.
no! Like knitting is loads of people in London on public transport. You'll see knitting, and I have a friend in London who he knits a lot, and it's someone photographed him knitting something on the tube, and we're like, oh, you know, what's he knitting? But the whole thing came back round, so
Yeah,
that eventually the guy, my friend who was knitting the jumper, got in touch with the guy who took the original photo on the tube. And he was
yeah.
like, I wasn't trying, you know, I wasn't having a go, mate. I was like, oh, that was just interesting. And he was like, no, that's fine and stuff. And he ended up knitting something for him. So, yeah, great thing to do because, you know, you're being productive. It's a good way to kind of, you know, quiet the mind, I suppose. It's
I
quite
think
meditative, isn't it?
yeah, that's what I do it for. It allows me to, because like when you're either following pattern or you're watching what your hands are doing. I mean, some people can do it and do other things as well. But you know, even if if I'm watching a program on TV, I'll find my mind will veer off, or you'll pick up your phone. I mean, God, phones are like the most amazing thing, but the worst thing. You know, it's like I'm looking at you on my phone now, and when Connor was in Jordan, you know, every Sunday night, same time, we'd the three of us would be talking to each other. That's just amazing. Isn't that amazing? My son's in another country and I'm talking to him like he's in the same room. And I say that as someone who's 50 and went away to college, and my parents didn't know what I was doing. So,
And you were probably
oh,
only like, what, 100 miles away down the
no,
road or whatever, not
no, no.
across an ocean.
God. So yeah, but at the same time, that you know, just when you should learn to switch it off and put it away because I am the worst for there's another notification, that type of thing, and what's that? And half the time it's nothing, but you're still fixated on it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, changes. I don't know because we are going to go through a lot of changes, and I'm aware of. Um, I think I need to. I'm nervous about taking staff on and getting over. Well, I think it's that trusting people, isn't it? That's what I need to learn to do. So I think there needs to be a bit more structure in how Stuart and I communicate with each other. It needs to be a bit more formalized. So there's a space for business and there's a space for us. And that probably needs to become more defined, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But there's going to be more people there. So at the moment, the people that work for us have been like part of our life for years, and I am aware that maybe it might be a bit more fluid. There might be more people coming in and going out, and they don't need to know the ins and outs of our marriage, do they? No. So maybe there needs to be some boundaries.
Well,
But
that's it. I mean, like it does change things. I mean, it's like one thing for, you know, this thing where businesses go, oh, we're a family and stuff. Like, we don't want any unions, we're a family. And it's like,
oh,
well, no, you're not. But
yeah,
then with small businesses, you kind of are. You kind of are in people, you are in each other's business and lives and stuff because you're small enough and you
yeah,
spend that much time together. But you can't have that kind of relationship with people who are just going to be there for 6 months or whatever, and they're just doing it for. Do you know what I mean? When you got that turnover, it's like you don't want to. Not
I
everybody
remember,
needs that level of detail and
I think I remember
intimacy.
what I always I always remember my dad because he had a small business, and he started off with him and one guy, and the guy had been leafleting for him, and he said to him, "Oh, I've got this job on, I can't do it just by myself. Do you want to come and help me?" And then that was his first employee, and they were together for a good few years, and the guy did become part of our family, and it was, really close bonds and everything. And then he started employing some more people, and I remember that time when he realized that he was the boss and they were their employees, because
Yeah, not
I
his
think,
friends.
yeah, and he was sad because he didn't have that relationship. But I think maybe I've gone into it realizing that there is that I, not that I'm the boss, not that I'm the boss, but these people, I have a responsibility, and I don't know how to describe it. It's not, you have a responsibility, and there is,
You have a professional responsibility, I think, is the
yeah,
thing, and that's the thing that is fuzzy.
yeah,
Is you don't, because that's what makes it hard to explain, isn't it? It's that, like, where am I? How do I see this in terms of employing someone? Because you're kind of responsible, but you're not responsible. They are an adult,
yes,
like in
yeah.
most circumstances, and it's a professional relationship.
But I am running a business, and
Yeah,
it does have, you are employed to do a role,
yeah. Which you have
but
agreed to do at a
yeah,
rate, but also, I mean, it's complicated. That's why I'm talking about it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. But
yeah.
I remember that my dad, and I think it was something silly, like, not something silly because it obviously wasn't silly to him. He'd gone out for yeah, he'd taken them out for a meal for Christmas, and he was upset that no one had ever even bought him a pint. He'd paid for the meal, and it sort of said to him, "All right, I'm the boss. I'm paying for this meal. That's how they see me." And it was just that. He was like, "Nobody even bought me a pint." And he was just really upset. And it just sort of said, because that's how, I suppose, how some people, like, you go to the pub and you buy your mate a pint. And it just, there was a bit of a, and I thought, oh no, is that what having your own business is? Is that how it's not, but it's always something that I've remembered, that time when he'd had, because he employed a lot of people over the years, and his business grew quite big and everything. Um, but I do remember that, and I remember my sister and I were quite small girls when he started. He was made redundant, and he set up his own business, and there was a few lean years there for a while. I think were quite difficult, and I remember the guy that he started employing, and he he was a character. And they used to come to our house and have food, and then we used to go to their house, and it was nice. It was almost had like a family feel to it. They sadly passed away, and but you it was different. And I do remember then he started to grow, and he started to have to couple he had to take on some teams, different teams, and yeah, no, I just remember that I don't know why it sticks with me, and it was just, I could see, had the realization that there is a the barrier there, but also sometimes because you are dealing with certain things, there does need to be a kind of, it's professionalism, isn't it? That's what I'm describing. Yeah, yeah. So I am always aware that there may have to be at some point some difficult conversations with people that you work with, and I have had a time where I've let a couple of people go. It's horrible, awful, hate it. But they didn't fit with the business. They didn't fit in with they didn't see what we were or what we wanted to be. And I think that's been the biggest problem when it's come to employing people, is that we don't just see where we are now, we see where we're going. And sometimes you need people to see that. Otherwise, if the people that work with you can't see where you want to go and what you want to be, they can't see the vision, and all they can see is now you might not be able to move on. You need people to come along with you. But sometimes it doesn't happen, and they move on, and that again is fine as well.
Well, I mean, the thing is with looking for employees or looking for people for your project. You were looking for people for your project. You want people to come along and help your project. And the problem with the people that are coming along to help on your project is they just want to get paid for a bit to do a thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
Which might be your project, hopefully, but in most cases it's not going to be. It's going to be like, and they're incentivized to go, yeah, I'm really into your project. Your project sounds really good because I want to get paid. Yeah, and I'd love to stay here for 6 years and really, really help you develop. It sounds amazing. Let me get involved. And I just need to go to Ibiza in November.
No, I think maybe that's part of it, is when it's your own business and it consumes you, which is not great.
But it kind of is as well. At least you've got something to you've got something to work on. I think that's good and important.
Yeah, but it isn't. It's my business. It's not their business, and I can't. There's a level of commitment I can expect from them, and anymore is unrealistic. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take the advantage here. I know we've talked a bit about COVID and around COVID. Like, unless there's anything that you particularly want to say on it, or like you want to do a quick summary of what happened, or anything that you want to sort of share from that, we can leave that for now. If you do the web, people can find you. So the website, anything coming up that you want people to check out or support. So over to you to do the selling bit.
Okay. So our website is www.swinethatdines.co.uk. Hopefully, I've just done a bit of rejigging. Hopefully, that should tell everybody what we're about. We always have some one-off menus. We're about to move, and so it should be us, not hugely bigger, but a bit bigger, but better. And then in the venue that we're in now, that will be transformed into something else, which we're still working on what that is exactly, but that's exciting as well. So that hasn't sold us very well, has it?
I think enough. I mean, you've spent 2 hours talking, so if people haven't bought by now, I know.
Maybe it's put people off. Oh God. Yeah.
No, it puts them off. It puts them off listening. But once they start listening, then you've got them. It's just that people see 2 hours and go, I'm not listening to that. They will come eventually. They will realize what this is, and they will come back round and be like, oh, I get it now. It's conversation, like proper conversations, not just sound bites. Oh, okay.
Oh, you may have realised I'm not good at a sound bite. It's not me. Brevity, no, not my strong point.
You'd be surprised, like, because some of the, like all the AI things that they're putting in everything now. So one of the things that they put in all these transcription softwares is like AI highlights to like, what are your pull quotes from this? What are the things that seem catchy and stuff? So if you just talk to one of those, I bet it could pull out some natural stuff that like, oh, that's actually that's a nice salesy thing, because you're better at it than you know, because you do it every day. But it's when you're thinking about it, because you're doing it with customers all the time on that kind of unconscious level, aren't you?
I was aware last night that I was chatting to some customers, and one of them asked me about our trip to Berlin, and I was aware as I was doing it how I was talking at this one particular restaurant, and I was aware at how much more animated I'd become. I was suddenly aware. I'm talking about food, and I was talking about the dishes, and I thought I'd never realised that about myself. That suddenly I became much more. I don't know. I was just much more Joe. I just suddenly became more, and I'd never really noticed the marked difference before. But yeah.
That's a really good outpoint. So just before I hit stop, is there anything that you want to add or anything that you want to say about COVID or anything? You don't have to, but just in case and just to give you the opportunity.
It was shit. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a reset for us. It made me realise a lot, both in our personal lives and our work life. And like I say, I lost my mum. And that was a couple of horrible years. My dad spent 2 years locked up with her, basically. You know, we were so frightened oh God, we were so frightened she was going to get it. And then she did get it. And all that happened was she couldn't taste her yogurt. Like, we spent a year trying to protect you from this thing. And you've got it. And you're like, I don't like the taste of my yogurt anymore. But my mum had dementia. And my dad spent 2 years with her by himself, which was
God.
really, really hard for him. And
Yeah,
then we
man.
lost her. And she wasn't in the best of health, and it made you think, oh God, it makes you think about your life, it makes you think about how you live, and it made us think about what we want from the business, and it was a reset. And it made us realise also, when we did the heat at home and the people that came out and supported us, how what we'd built. So on a personal level, it made us think a lot about stuff. But from a business point of view, it made us realise what exactly we had, and maybe we weren't just that sandwich shop. It gave us more confidence, which I don't think we had before, because we realised that every time we said, "This is what our offering is this week," we sold out, you know, in the space of 24 hours, and people came out and they collected stuff from us. And you know, and we again, there was still, despite we had all masks on, there was still that interaction and connection with people. And it made us realize what the business was as well, which has given us more confidence to be where we are. So, you know, don't take anything for granted. We've worked really hard to get where we are, but yeah, it was awful, but it also made us realize a lot.
I think one thing I want to say, final thing, is what you said there, talking about what you had, what you wanted. And like, we often discuss work, our careers, our labour in terms of, you know, what we've done, what we want to do. And then there's that, what we're doing, you know? And as much as you've been thinking about what you want to do and where you want to go to me as well, I think, you know, and especially with that COVID, the reference back to COVID there, it's about thinking about what you do as well. And I think a lot of thinking about what you do is trying to get that, because if you think about all of these business things, these marketing things, these values things, where they're like, oh, what's the value proposition, and what's your angle, and what's your story, and what are you selling? It's like, what do you do? What is it that you do? What do you do that's different from other people? How do you do it? Like all of that kind of question. But we don't necessarily think about that all the time. Does that make sense to you? Do you agree with any of that, or is that like, what the hell you want about, Simon?
Um, I, what do I,
Because it seems like through COVID, you know, as much as like this move, you have defined what you've done, and like through this conversation, we've kind of like, you know, it seems to me now you've got a really good distillation of what it is that the greedy pig is, that the swine that dine is, that
yes.
you know, what your relationship is, what your business is, and how you do that business. Like, and that's been
Oh,
something that you
do you know
built.
what? I personally feel more together now than I've ever done at any point in my life. It only took me 50 years to get here, Um, but I do. I'm more focused. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. I think that's the key as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to say no. Nope, that's not for me. And actually, yeah, not being frightened of who I am. And yeah, no, I know who I am now. And I don't, but I think that's half the goal in life, isn't it? Trying to work out who you are. But when I know what my role is, whether it's personal or business. Yeah, and I know. Yeah, I just feel in a better place than I've done before. I can't even remember what the question was. Do I know what do I do? What do I do?
I was like, yeah. Well, we've just discussed it. Hopefully not covered it all, but yeah. Okay, I'm gonna hit stop.
think my role
go on,
is to
sorry.
make other people. No, sorry. My role is to make other people or enable other people to do what they do best. That's what I see my role in the business is.
Yeah.
That,
But
and I feel
that's
in
what
some
a
extent
leader
that's
should be.
yeah. Oh well,
Yeah.
there we go. There we
Yeah.
go.
It's not showing people what to do. It's showing them that they can do what they want to do.
Yeah, yeah. You can press stop now. I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you again to Joe for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find The Swine That Dines at swinethatdines.co.uk. If you'd like to contact me about working hours or any of my guests or their interviews or what the hell I'm on about at any particular moment or anything at all working hours related, even about being a guest, yes, you can do that if you're a lawyer. Then you can email me about the show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you would like to buy Working Hours episodes outside of the main project, either as gift episodes for yourself or for others, you can do that, and you don't need to be based in Leeds for that. If you've been a guest already and you want to buy additional clips or content from your Working Hours episode or interview, then I'm obviously happy to let you do that. If you want to license Working Hours for anything, or if you really want some Working Hours merch, let me know. If you're an individual, a business, or an organisation based in West Yorkshire and you would like to sponsor or advertise on Working Hours, get in touch. It will be ridiculously cheap. If you want to contribute financially to Working Hours, you can make a donation of any amount or buy a membership subscription to support regularly. There's plenty of ways to do that, but the easiest way is via Ko-fi. That's ko-fi.com/working hours. If you would like to make a version of Working Hours for yourself about your own city, then also get in touch to discuss that and how we might boost each other's projects. If you are a business, an individual, or an organisation that is ready to take that next step and make your own podcast or audio content for your own audiences, then you can do that and support Working Hours by buying podcast services from me at Western Studios Leeds Limited. I've made podcasts for businesses, organisations and individuals, as well as the over 140 episodes of Working Hours, and I can give your show as much hands-on or hands-off support as you need. I can only take on so many shows though, so speak to me sooner rather than later about your show needs if you would like to work with me. To make your West Yorkshire podcast, email makemypodcast at western-studios.com. Website and social links for Western Studios Leeds are in the credits. Commissions from outside of West Yorkshire will be considered, but it will cost a little more, just a smidge. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So work for peace and plan with kindness. Raise your voice and reduce your impact. Be big with your space and big with your dreams. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from musopen.com. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either working hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loiners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.